Hello everyone, it's Matt here and welcome to a review of 60169, the cargo terminal. This is a 2017 city set and includes everything you see in the image here, including the lorry with articulated trailer, forklift, guardhouse or security office, pallet lifter, and also a pallet stack at the back along with the little truck. So we'll first move on to the lorry and the trailer and a little discussion about the cargo system.
For those interested, the set consists of 8 part bags, all numbered 1 to 8, and a 9th bag containing the instructions and the sticker sheet.
So the lorry then. To start off with, it's definitely a European lorry because of the way it's been sized and the general aesthetic, or at least a European inspired lorry, I should say. It does use the new or fairly new cab piece for the back there to allow your minifig to actually sit down properly and then not have anything blocking it. And obviously there's no studs at the back, so it's just held on with the ones at the top on the front of the windscreen. So I'll just take this off a second and do that and knock the door off. So I put that back on. So you do get a left-hand side driver, so that does fit in rather nicely. And you do actually get indicators. They're not on the front. They are on the side, so you do actually get some indicators. Although, admittedly, that also would be where the cab steps are. So, that is a bit of a negative. The cargo section itself, so this is sort of like a fuel tank. Then you got some guardrails. Then you got the wheels, and then you get to the back. The whole issue I have with the lorry in the set and the trailer is I think it would have been better just as a regular sort of articulated lorry with a cab section and then like a 6-wheel cab and then a proper trailer, because then you could have fitted on 3 containers onto the trailer, and then the trailer could have gone on this. And you would have had a bit more playability in that sort of way. Because the other issue is that now this lorry, or if you're going to have it as this, the cab looks quite nice, quite bulky, quite, sort of well proportioned. But then you get to the trailer, sort of like the cargo section, and it does look extremely thin and weedy. And it's actually surprisingly pretty much built just with Technic beams. And that's another part of the issue, because you can see there's actually sort of like light bluish grey there. If I turn it around, that's dark bluish grey. And then you get light bluish grey at the front there, but then dark bluish grey on this side. So that, if you were being a bit picky, that would be a detractor for me, the fact that they couldn't get matching colour parts. There's some brown in there, there's some green under here, and that would really should be grey. And it's just things like that where it detracts from the look of the set. The cab itself, it's actually kind of removable. So if I can do this carefully enough and not take the entire section off and just screw it up completely. So now I have returned. So yeah, they could have actually have left this 2x4 plate here as a tile, and then you could have actually had the cab removable. And there are actually indicators at the front. I did miss that. They're there at the front, but obviously, because of the scaling of the truck, normally those would actually be on the side there. So possibly that should have been a clear tile, and that should have been a translucent orange tile, and then it would have matched up properly. But it's part of the issue with scaling it properly. Trailer then, kind of alright, but like the the cargo section on the main tractor unit or the lorry section, again it's very oddly coloured, and again very wheelie. Don't get me wrong, it does the job, but the colours do distract a bit from it, because you've got one solitary green piece up here and then loads of green on the underframe, which does distract it in my eyes, especially if you look at the underside there, because there's actually some tan under there, but there's not anywhere else, so it does kind of ruin it that way. There's plenty of green here, there's some tan, funny colours there, so there's some brown and some white, but they don't actually match anything else. And the things like the wheels, for example, I think the wheels would have been better actually positioned more towards the rear. If you're going to keep this sort of design on the set, I would have said the wheels would have been better back under that section, because at the moment they're kind of on the corner, and really you would have preferred them slightly inset, because then you would have had a better sort of balance for the cargo. And you can kind of tell about some of the poor design work, because they've actually just used a 2x4 brick here just to space it out further enough so it doesn't actually so the container can actually fit on properly. So it kind of makes you suspect that they were going for just a standard one container on there, two containers on here, and then they've had to change the design up a bit, possibly because they had a longer trailer and they actually had to narrow it down. But yeah, it's alright, serves a purpose, but you know, realism has been knocked out the window for this one. So now let's turn and have a look at the container system. So obviously we've got the lorry and the trailer here, and there are 4 containers, one for, you know, 2 for there, two for there, and these are actually split up into 3 sort of groups of containers. So the first container is a Lego one, so there would be stickers on the end, but I've not applied those for now. But there you go, you get a pallet full of Lego sets. Kind of unrealistic, because these are normally actually wrapped up in real life, but this is Lego's own world. So you get 2 of the Swamp Police helicopter sort of chase tile, and then you get 4 of the sort of rescue tile, I want to say, sort of like when you got the breakdown, or it might actually be a beach buggy set. I'm not entirely too sure on the actual set that's based on, but again, and the pallets themselves, you actually get the pallet itself actually slides into the container, so you have a 4x6 pallet inside a 6x10 container. A bit of a waste of space, if you ask me, but you know, let's move on. So this now fits on, so you have one there. The next one is actually supposed to be some form of small one-person speedboat or jet scooter. So kind of goes with the nautical theme. Kind of unrealistic from the size, personally. But again, it's Lego working in the constraints of their set. So this one, in terms of cargo, is actually the weakest. It's nice to get these panelled pieces, and these are in the sort of like murky green colour. I'll have people berating me for using that word, but it is kind of like a murky, sort of like marshy green colour. Nice to see it, but you know, I think it actually appeared in the one of the police sets from 2015, possibly early 2016. Which people are really clamouring out to get, and now you get several of them in the set. The last 2 containers actually go together, which is why I've put those on there and those 2 for here. And actually get a sort of like multi-purpose lawnmower type vehicle, and it's actually, I've actually modified the pallet, not using any special parts or anything, but I did have to modify the pallet because of the small size of the vehicle and the quite weightiness of the back. If you have it how Lego actually have the set it as you build it, the pallet does actually want to tip back. So I had to modify that to fit in. It doesn't actually stay still anymore, so it is prone to move about, kind of like that if it's disturbed slightly, so you do have to be careful, but it does actually fit in there. And the other pallet is actually accessories for that unit, so you actually can take this out and you have the choice of like a mirror unit, and that just clips in, and that will just clip to the front, or you have the choice of this sort of like snowplow. And this actually can be angled up and down as well. So a nice mixture, in effect, of cargo. I would have preferred some sort of like food or something else, because obviously Lego sets, yes, you know, it's a toy theme, I can get it, it's kind of a self sort of reference. The ship, or the sort of like mini speedboat, nice, but again, you know, really constrained in terms of the size because it has to fit on the pallet. And this, I think, is actually possibly the best cargo out of the lot, because yes, it doesn't fit inside one container. It could do, but it doesn't. But you kind of see why they've done that. Now, if I'm going to be blunt, I think this system for the cargo is rubbish. I personally would have preferred to have one system out of everything, so either stick with pallets or stick with the containers. And I would have actually preferred to have gone, the pallets would actually make more sense than the cargo containers, but then you wouldn't have needed the big crane, which I'll get onto in a minute. But it kind of annoys me that they've gone for this double system, because there is an awful lot of wasted space in these containers. And to be perfectly honest, you know, if I take this out, you know, I can effectively fit 2.5 of these pallets for every space in the container. So, you know, if I have 2 of these containers, effectively I could have fitted 5 pallets on that lorry. Effectively, not realistically, because obviously there's no side to it, but that would have been 5 pallets, and effectively all the pallets here would have gone on that lorry. So it's kind of been a sort of almost like a sort of like waste space creating for Lego to do it this way. I can get why, because of the playability, but in terms of realism, I've yet to see anything like this. I would have preferred either a tractor unit and a proper trailer. So you could have the tractor unit with a 3 container trailer, or alternatively a tractor unit and then a curtain sided trailer, or a solid wall one, and then you could have the pallets being able to be slid in and out of that. Perfectly reasonable, extremely feasible in real life, but they haven't gone for that. They've gone for this double system, if you like. But enough of that. Let's now move on to the forklift and the container lifter. So here is the container lifter, and it really does hark back to one of the sets Lego did previously, back in World City days, I do believe, or certainly around from that sort of time frame. It's a really nice sort of container lifter. However, it's not without the flaws. So, you know, this side view may look very nice, but obviously you have that clear see-through gearbox there for lifting the arm up and down. So nice play feature, but that is a bit of a distraction. The front is a bit weedy, because obviously this has been left to get in quite close to lorries, for example, and do pallets. I would have preferred this to have actually come out a little bit more, possibly by another 2 or 3 studs, so you would have got a nice effect there. You know, there's no handrails on it, which I would have preferred, because obviously got some steps there, but there's no handrails for it to hold on. This side over here, I kind of understand, but they've added a 1x4 panel piece, and I think a tile would have actually have fitted in there a lot better, so that you would have had a nice little back gap. The figure would have still been kept in quite nicely, but again, it would have been a bit better for them to have done it that way. There's a little hazard light on the top, again fits in really nicely, and they've actually done grille lights for the front of the vehicle. These are on click hinges, so they're angled upwards, and then it is just a, I can do this, yeah, it is just a 1x2 trans clear plate, and then a 1x2 modified tile piece. It's a grille piece on the back, on the top, on the front there. On the back you have the rear red lights, and on the front you have these lights obviously, but there's no indicator lights. And you get the hazard light, but that's only at the top. There's no other lights here. And I understand that obviously in the cargo sort of like Highbury section, you would not necessarily have had indicators on these, but it is something which I feel is a bit missing. And again, like the lorry, you do actually see some of the Technic beams in here, so that is again a bit of a distraction. But with the way they've done the wheels, I don't really know how they would have done it, with the exception of just pulling that whole section forward and filling it in, and then you could have used a 2x4 brick with the axle pegs to the side, or possibly some just regular Technic bricks and then connect pegs out of that. A lot they've done here. So this kind of looks alright, but they've got this massively long arm and they've put this weedy tiny Technic beam in. So yes, you can actually pull this out slightly, but you don't want to pull it too far, so that is actually a limit, and even that wobbles quite a lot. So you probably want it about there, just for a bit of stability. And even then, you're not actually able to reach very far over, enough to pick up the containers off the lorry. But again, if it just created a longer arm to begin with, that actually would have been solved quite like that. So obviously you can close it in quite tightly, and then that actually goes quite close. So again, I think if they'd had a bit of a redesign, they could have fitted this in quite nicely. And again, like some of the other pieces in the set, there's quite a lot of sort of visible sort of pieces which don't really make sense and distract from visual. So you obviously got like the red axle there, got all the Technic function on the gearbox, and you got all the Technic up here. But I will say this for Lego, is that because of the way they've done it, the hook is almost centered in line with the vehicle, which does make a nice change, because normally they are off to one side, and they've actually tried to center it for this vehicle to kind of align it with the driver. So that actually is something I'm quite glad Lego have done in this iteration. So again, that is actually some points in their favour for this piece of the set. Sorry. The forklift is actually one of the nicest ones Lego have done. It's not quite nice and weighty. It looks realistic. There's a nice grill piece there for some ventilation. It really does fit in nicely. It's double-sided, so you can access it in and out, which is like most forklifts. You do actually get the chair as a mudguard feature. They introduced that back in World City, I believe, for the cargo cranes forklift in that. They've reused that trick here to great effect. As per usual for a city set, you do get a coffee mug, which I don't believe would actually be that realistic, but it does fit in quite nicely. And as per most forklifts, you can actually angle that back, and obviously you can have it go up and down, and this is on a rather nice rubber band for flexibility. They have lights at the front here, and the reason why they've actually used that brick with the two studs is actually to support the lift arm, so that actually just interacts with that just at the bottom of the rails, and it just actually hold it nice and in. You do get rear lights at the back, and you get like a flashing beacon at the top, or what would be a flashing beacon at the top. So it does fit in very nice. It does look very nice, but kind of like the container stack, there's no indicators on this, and I'd understand it on the forklift, but not necessarily on the container stack. So obviously this is quite small. The driver has to look around where they're going all the time. So there's a bit more about the forklift driver to indicate that they have to be aware of their situation. Whereas with the container stacker, because they're focusing on having to lift a big heavy container and making sure that might not come off the hook, with the way Lego do their containers nowadays, obviously there is a bit of an issue about the fact that this wouldn't necessarily need indicators, but the container stacker would. So it's just a little bit of a thing for thought there. Of the two last things to look at in the set, we have the security office or gatehouse. This is quite small, but a really good use of parts. So we have a gate here, and that is able to be moved up and down. I'll just move the figure off to the side, and you do get this nice black roof, which makes a nice change. Another use of the sort of like cab cockpit section they use, this time for the sign. And on the inside of the office you get a seat here with a moving window, so I'll show you that on the outside in a second. It's a coffee machine with 2 mugs and a cookie as well, so clearly well provisioned in this office. They have for some reason, a spanner and a push broom. So the push broom I can understand, the spanner not quite. And moving around to the front, they have a walkie-talkie, a moving glass door. Again, that's a bit posh for a security office. I would, or gatehouse. I would have thought that would have been either solid wood or one with a window in it, rather than that. And here is the sliding window. It's a bit stiff in my opinion, possibly because of the way I've been built it. The fact there's not a lot of clearance in it. Does work really well though. And on the corners they've actually made really good use of that by having lights. So there's a light there, then there's a camera there. That flag piece up there would actually be a display of the driver from the security camera, which is actually on the sticker sheet. So I'll just show that there. So that would have been on the screen there. So overall it fits in really nicely and does look really good. And the last piece of the set is this pallet stack. This can cope with all 4 pallets of the set in one time, but obviously that then means the containers are empty. And this is designed just for use with the forklift on its own. So for example, here is an empty pallet and it quite literally just sits in there and slides in. It's not actually anchored in any way, and there is a bit of flexibility for it to move side to side, but this is a really nice simple construction, and again, if they'd gone with the pallet system this would have made perfect sense. It is exposed at the back and the sides, which I don't particularly think would be that great in terms of this sort of thing. Obviously I think this might actually be referring to an inside, sort of like a giant warehousey sort of style one, in which case this would actually be covered up. You might not necessarily have the roof on it, and it would actually work quite well, because then you could have food, for example, on pallets, or other stuff which is, you know, kind of restricted about what conditions it can be in, because there's certain, you know, either temperature or environment needs that the cargo needs. But again, it's nice, fairly simple construction, and it just really does fit in quite well. So now let's move to the minifigures.
The set contains 4 minifigures, from left to right: the gatehouse keeper, the lorry driver, the container stack operator, and then the forklift truck driver. These are nice prints, or torso prints at least. They're reused from other sets, but the reuse is quite good. They're not duplicated much across the city theme, and unfortunately there's no alternate face prints. I would have expected it from at least the female staff, because obviously they've got hair pieces which would have covered it up, but again, the faces I've got are good, but I would have preferred a bit more of a neutral expression for the gatehouse keeper. For the spares, please note that the 2x2 jumper tiles are not actually supposed to be there. They're actually from the lawnmower pallet, and I had to take them off because obviously I was trying to get the item on there properly. So they're actually not spares, but everything in that pot is.
So a conclusion then about the set. I would definitely say the set certainly has its merits. You know, there's a wide variety of things to do. You know, the forklift I think is one of the best ones Lego's ever done. You know, it's quite nicely proportioned, it's nice and chunky. You know, it won't fall off once you've got a bit of cargo in there. You know, it does seem to fit it in very nicely. But the truck and the trailer I think could have been better just as one sort of tractor and trailer unit. So you wouldn't have had this cargo section here. It would have just been the front bit and then the 4 wheels at the back, and then the trailer is one section. but then they could have extended that to cope with 3 containers on one go, which could be feasible in real life, and sort of done it that way. And at least then you've actually got a spare container you can have, dotted around the yard, waiting to be collected by the lorry and go off somewhere. The guardhouse, I think, it's really, although it's simple, it fits in really well with the whole set, and it's a fantastic use for the parts. Lego couldn't really have done much better for the parts. There's a few weak points on it, like the sort of guardrail at the bottom. That's only held on by 2 studs, so with hard knocking and certain hard play, it might actually come off, but sort of like that. But I'm starting to get into nitpicking territory, and it's a fairly good set, but I think the cargo system as well, the fact that you've got both a forklift and a container lifter, and then you've got pallets inside containers, kind of defeats the whole point of having the system. Either you'd go with a enclosed lorry with the pallets, or the containers to begin with, with opening doors, for example. Both of which would have been fairly achievable. If you'd actually have the lorry, you could have still kept the pallet system, which has been in other sets. But anyway, for the price I had to pay for this, which was very reasonable because it was on offer. I think it was about a 25% discount on the set when I bought it. What you get here, it's really good. The one thing I do want to say though is that although all the instructions are in a sealed bag, these are the stickers after about a couple of, these were what the stickers were like after a couple of hours, all curled up, and don't get me wrong, they could be straightened out quite nicely, and it probably won't affect the stickers in any way, but it does annoy me that, I generally speaking prefer to leave the stickers off until the last bit, because it's one of the things to put all the stickers on to make sure they're all nice and tidy, and then I come to a bent sticker sheet, so that is another detractor from it. So if I was going to give this a set, a marks out of 10, I'd probably go for 8.5. It's a good start. There's some fantastic ideas here, good parts use, but there's the lorry and a few other bits and pieces are detractors, and for me, I'd actually mark the set down for that. So anyway, that's all from my review, and hope you'll see me in the next video.